So, hi everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to get into this episode. We have two special guests. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about what they do, and whatever you'd like to share, feel free to share.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Terry, and I am an educator. Of a number of years, I'm a coach, and I teach teachers how to teach, and
Yeah.
it's a pretty powerful thing. This is my husband.
Hi, I'm Orville, and I'm the Director of Organizational Development, Engagement, and Inclusion at U of L Health.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. Thank you guys. So, for a little bit of context, these are my parents.
Yes, we are.
I'm very excited because if you listen to our first episode, I did allude to the type of household that I was raised in and how I perceived their love as kind of like the perfect fairy tale. So I wanted to bring them, right. I wanted to bring them on the show because I feel like they kind of epitomize marriages that work. And I feel like I've been really blessed to see that. But the reality is, as I'm sure we'll discover through the episode, is that marriage is a choice. It's ongoing work, and I really wanted to shed light on that with this episode.
Okay.
So let's get into the nitty gritty. Yes. So could you guys tell me about when you first met each other? I love this story.
You want to start?
You go, mommy.
When we first met each other, honestly, it wasn't like love at first sight. We were with friends, and he hooked up with one of my friends, and
That's not the right description.
you go ahead and start. I'll follow.
So there was no hooking up. We
Right, but me hook up means something different these days.
yes.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know.
Anyway, so we met each other. I think we were fresh out of high school. We had just
Yeah, we were.
finished high school, and it was an unusual meeting. Myself and two other friends had gone to a church event, and the event ended early, and the boys didn't want to go home, so we decided we were going to go downtown and hang out. And while we were just milling around, Terry and two of her friends had just been coming from another church event, not the same one, but
Yeah,
they
different
were
church
involved in
event.
something
Yeah.
else. And it happened to be three of them and three of us. And we were trying to decide at that point in time whether we at least wanted to spend some time together having a meal. We had a common friend that introduced us, and we
Yeah.
had never met before. So that was the first time we got together. We went to this fast food restaurant and sat down and just had roti and those kinds of things, and started to get to know one another at that point in time.
Yeah.
Y'all had gone to Chefette?
Shafet,
Yeah, we
yes.
went to Chefette.
And Shafet wasn't even the Shafet that you know it to be
No.
now. It was,
No, it wasn't. Chefette had just opened up, actually. So,
And for reference,
friend, yeah.
yeah, so Chefette is a fast food restaurant in Barbados for those who are not aware, and it is very delicious. So, right, so y'all were at Chefette, you met each other, and you exchanged numbers, or you did not?
At that time, we didn't.
So I think this is where the hooking up thing that came about first came up. It so happened because there were three people, three girls and three boys. You tended to talk to the person who was sitting next to you, and there was no prearranged sitting next to each other. So I was talking to somebody else at that point in time.
So it was because you were sitting next to her that you spoke with her,
Pretty much.
not
Pretty much,
Okay.
yeah. Again, we didn't know each other, and it was only this one common friend that was between us. And the young lady that sat beside me, we thought we would exchange numbers, and it wasn't Mummy at that point in time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, today's day and age, we do similar things, obviously, when we meet up with, if it's three guys and three girls. I don't know if we would do if you sitting next to somebody, we would exchange numbers. That's quite nice. I feel like you exchange numbers with who you like. Like,
well, I think that that's the trick in this whole thing because I think Mummy was checking me out all that time when I was sitting beside somebody else.
Yes, I was. But the person who was was a common friend. I was closer to him, so we had a good friendship, and I was chatting with him, and so we never got around. Daddy and I, we never got around to exchanging numbers or anything like that
Not that
at
first
that
night.
time.
Yeah.
No.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
But you, mommy, you were noticing daddy.
Yeah, I noticed him from the first time we met,
Oh, that's so
but I never
cute.
said anything.
Oh, you never said anything about it.
No.
So when did you guys finally get to the point of exchanging contact information? Because this is before like cell phones and stuff, right?
Because
my
that ancient
goodness.
though. But yes. Yes. I don't remember how it played out, but it became very
Me
obvious
either.
to me that
Yeah.
the young woman who had exchanged numbers with me was perhaps not going to be the one that I would continue talking to. And somewhere in between that, we stopped talking to each other. And in other words, it never progressed. We never,
Yeah.
we
Right,
never,
right.
we never tried to even have relationship or anything like that. But I did remember Terry at that point in time, and I guess one day it just crossed my mind I should call her and
Yeah.
say hello. And
And I remember when that call came, I was so glad to get it. I'm
Oh,
surprised that he had called.
she actually said, "I was wondering if you would ever call me."
Yes.
my goodness. Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is so cute. So from there, you guys started your friendship, and then it just developed naturally.
I would say so. It took, like every relationship would take time to get to know one another. By that, at that point in time, you spend a lot of time on the phone talking.
Yeah.
And then we started going out on Saturday evenings,
And
and
then we joined the singing group.
well, I was in the singing group all that time.
Well, yeah, you were in
The
it,
Family of
and
God choir,
yes,
and then
and then I joined the Family of God, so we got to spend a lot of time together
Okay.
on weekends.
So when you guys first contacted each other, was it with the intention of friendship, or did you guys have more in mind?
I would say that my call was an exploratory call to see if there was any level of interest at that point in time. I guess I had also seen her that
You
night.
admit it now.
Yeah, and I can tell you exactly what she was wearing that night. It was
Oh my
a
goodness.
bubble skirt, and she had a
Yeah,
T-shirt with a knot at the
on
side
the
of
side.
it. So I had seen her, but again, I think it would have been inappropriate to have contacted her, having not really determining that the first young woman that I had exchanged numbers with, whether there was anything there. There really wasn't any flame there. There wasn't any connection there. At some time, like a few weeks in between our last conversation where it was established this isn't going anywhere kind of thing. I don't remember what happened, but I felt like I should just call and explore if there was any any interest whatsoever in having a further conversation. And that was how things got started, so to speak.
And for me, when we first got together, it was just a relationship. I didn't think anything really beyond that. I was just happy that he called and that we could get to know each other better.
So it was like a no pressure situation. It was just, there's interest and we're just getting to know each other kind of thing.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
think, honestly, at the back of your mind, you're wondering if this could become something, but it wasn't an all out.
No.
Let's go at
Mm-mm.
this because I kind of liked her, but I didn't know if I really liked her because she seemed a little bit hoity-toity, a little bit snooty, and that wasn't
Probably was
my
bougie.
bougie,
Right. That
that
explains so
wasn't.
much.
Yeah, that wasn't my speed, so I wasn't so sure. So I was very well. Let's see where this goes. Yeah.
Okay. So I've seen on social media a lot, people say that it doesn't take a man a long time to know this is the person who they want to be with. Daddy, is that something that you would agree with in your experience?
Um, I don't think it's as simplistic as that.
Hmm.
I think that you are feeling for that vibe to see if there's a connection, and I think that that connection manifests itself in different ways. I think as you are exploring relationships, there are cues that you're looking for to see if this is a journey that you can continue to go on, and there are cues that say this isn't going anywhere, so let's not press this, because I think for relationships to happen, there has to be some common thread that pulls the individuals together, even if it is just a mutual interest in exploring one another. And sometimes that vibe doesn't kick in. So, but I
They
wouldn't
know.
say that the alternative to that is really true, meaning I think that it takes several conversations. I think it takes several encounters for you to determine if this is the person that you can go a little bit further with. And I don't think it is as simplistic as you can make that assessment really very early. Not if you're truly interested in relationship building.
Okay, so let's move on to the next phase of your relationship. You're dating, everything is cool, you're getting to know each other, there's romantic interest, right?
Yeah.
So, was there a turning point where you decided, okay, yes, this is the person that I want to be with?
I think for me, the turning point might have been the fact that Daddy was not a pushover. I could not manipulate him and tell him what I wanted him to do. Like he listened to me, he did things and so on, but um, when it came to me forcing him to do things or go here or go there, he was not like that. So I
Mhm.
felt as though he was in charge, as though he knew his mind. He was not like the sea and the waves, just wavering back and forth. And I like that stability and that determination. I think that's one of the biggest things that attracted me to him, along, of course, with the fact that I wanted to be with somebody who could take a leadership role in our family or a
Mm,
leadership role in our relationship.
mhm. Okay.
Yeah. I would say that it would be almost impossible to think of relationship building as a straight line. I really
Mhm.
think of it as hills and valleys. And it's the ability of the relationship to navigate the hills and valleys Um, I recall very early in our courtship that there were a few things that made me check for a minute and say, okay, is this really going to develop into something or not? Because uh, even though we were talking to each other and having good fellowship with one another, there were a few things that were happening that made me feel, well, I'm not so sure that this is sustainable. And I'm thinking specifically about a particular event that I thought was a um, out of the blue on this Wednesday afternoon.
You know that it was a Wednesday?
I know it was a Wednesday because we tended to have rehearsals. If we had an event coming up, we had a rehearsal on Wednesday evening. So I know it was a Wednesday, and that Wednesday in question, I realized that her disposition was quite different, and she seemed to be in turmoil about something that was going on.
And this was after how long?
I can't really say, but it was early.
Okay.
I want to say it probably wasn't even a year yet that we had been talking to each other. If so, like, I don't think it was a year yet, but it was at that point where I think that it would have been a make or break, which was we were at that point where we could say we walk away or that we press through this and make it work.
Like long term?
Like long term, because I felt that the situation that we had faced at that point in time was, I think Terry was really trying to make an evaluation of whether she wanted to move forward. But I kept pressing her to understand, well, what brought you to this point? And she wasn't saying anything at all to me. It was a pretty miserable Wednesday evening because where we had rehearsal was within walking distance to where she would take the bus to go home because we didn't have cars at that point in time. We were still very young. Remember, we met right out of high school.
Oh, yes. How
So-
old were you guys again when you met?
So we were
17?
17 going on 18. So these are two 19-year-olds now that I'm talking about that we're trying to figure out this thing. And so like normal, I walked her all the way down to her bus, which was the polite thing to do in the day, make sure that she got on the bus safely, and then I go get my next bus kind of thing. And that walk was a long, lonely walk because she was not responsive. She was clearly in some kind of turmoil about where we were and where things were going to go. And I had made up in my mind that if she got on that bus and I didn't get an answer at that point in time, that was it. Because I felt
That was the end of the relationship.
of the relationship. Because we were at that point, in my opinion, that it was a
pause.
go or no go.
Oh, pause. Oh, yeah. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb. You guys are fine. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, sorry. You said, just repeat what you said before.
So again, it was young enough. Things were at that pivot point where a go or no go would have been all right-ish, meaning we
It
can
wouldn't
live
be a
with,
big
we can live
deal.
with it either way. Not that it wouldn't have been a big deal because we had already invested time. We had already gone on a few dates and we had spent hours on hours on the telephone building relationship. It just seemed like odd timing at a time where I felt like we were making traction, but we are.
Wait, but I think I'm just realizing this timeline here. To make such a pivotal decision in less than a year of talking to each other, were you guys technically like boyfriend and girlfriend?
Yes,
'Cause
we were. Yes, we were.
right,
were.
so you guys were like boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yes, we were. Yes, we
Okay, so in a relationship, and the relationship had been around for less than a year, or you guys had been talking for less than a year?
Uh, well, you see, that's the thing about what it was back then and what it
Yeah.
is now, because
Because
what
now you have
what
all
you
these.
what you call talking is relationship. From the time you start talking, that's the beginning
That's
of
the
the
beginning of
relationship.
it.
There's no exploring of when we start talking. That's the indication that we are interested in
Yeah.
relationship. So it's not like I exploring to see if we're gonna explore. And that's not how it works.
Right.
So from the time you started communicating, that's your girlfriend?
That's the indication
That's
that
it.
we are working
That very,
toward that.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the same thing as talking today then. But there's a switch that happens where it's like it goes from being exploratory to now it's like,
Well,
this is my partner.
kind of. So I would say that the switch that happened was when I used to work for a bank back then, and
And I
she
did
was
as
my
well.
date at the party, the Christmas
The
party.
Christmas party. Yeah.
Oh, so that's like an announcement.
That's right.
Yes.
So we are out together, and
Mhm.
that is the announcement. These two people are together.
And that
Right.
was that the first year?
You know what? That was probably year
The
two.
second year.
Yeah,
That was the
so my
second
timeline is
year.
a little
Yeah,
wrong.
that was the
So
second year.
maybe it was
Yeah.
over a year.
Yeah.
So she did go with me to that Christmas party because we had started talking to each other the year prior
The
to
year
that.
before. Yeah.
Okay.
So once she goes out with me in such a formal setting, that's like the announcement that we are together, and it was obvious to everybody that we were together.
Right.
So I would say it was probably a year and a half or so
Yeah.
that we
Okay.
reached this pivot point.
Okay. All right, got ya. All right, cool. So back to the pivot point. You're walking mommy to the bus.
And clearly, something transpired in her head. She's uncertain about whether she wants to move forward or not. I am initially confused, then somewhat anxious, and then somewhat at peace.
At peace.
Yeah, because I had gone through these three different emotions in the space of maybe 3 or 4 hours, because all of this started before the rehearsal. In the middle of the rehearsal, we're preparing for an event that weekend, and my mind was on what's going on here. So during that confused period, and then when we started walking to the bus, and I realized, okay, you're not going to answer me. You're not going to tell me anything. I had made up in my mind, if you got on that bus and you did not explain to me what was happening, I was not going to keep myself in turmoil. It's all good. We had not gone beyond the point of no return where I could say that, I would have been disappointed. I would have been hurt. But we were still very much in that early exploratory stage of whether there's permanence to the relationship. So she got on the bus with no explanation. So I said, okay, I'm at peace with that. And
Wow.
I had said, if you get on that bus and you don't tell me, then rest assured that I'm walking away tonight believing that we're not moving forward anymore.
So you told her that,
I told her that.
like verbally. Wow.
Yeah, because I
Wow.
said it doesn't make sense if we're not communicating. That is the hallmark of a relationship. You've got to be able to communicate. You can't leave the other person in abeyance trying to figure out what's going on in your head, because what it does is it creates a high degree of anxiety, etc. And knowing my personality, I either had to make a decision about that, or it would have been very uncomfortable for me. So she got on the
Wow.
bus, and I was like, okay, see ya. And I started walking, going in the other direction, because my bus was maybe a 10-minute walk on the other side of town. And I probably had gotten maybe into my walk maybe a minute, 2 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and I hear these footsteps running, 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 coming and calling my name.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so we have to pause now because this is like a movie. So we have the footsteps. So let's do a rewind to hear what was going through Mummy's head when all of this was happening.
Okay.
Okay, so all of what Daddy said, yeah. So I'm not gonna go over all of that again. What was going on in my mind was I was really trying to make a decision. Um, and my mind was in turmoil. And this is because I had spoken to another friend and about what I was thinking and listened to advice from other directions, and it didn't help me. And one thing I
Oh.
would say is that what I've learned is that when you're trying to make decisions, it's very important to think about who you are sharing your thoughts with, because sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's just a waste of time. And for me, it was a waste of time. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
when I got in the bus, I was sitting there thinking about what he has said, and I felt as though it was as though a light burst through this cloud. And I realized, but
Well, wait. Before we even get to the
yeah,
bus, what did you think when Daddy told you outside the bus, if you get on this bus, this is the end of it? What were your thoughts hearing something so final? You thought he was really gonna be able to stick to that, or or did you
my
think?
my thought was, okay.
What? This is the
My
first time.
thought, yeah, my thought was, all right.
This is the first time I'm hearing that piece.
But
Oh my
I
goodness!
started thinking about our relationship up to that point in time. I realized, but you're making a mistake. I mean,
So in the first, they
yeah,
had you in the first half because you said, okay, that's what you thought?
that I didn't think a lot because my mind, as I
Yeah.
said, my mind was in turmoil, and I mean, I wasn't sure what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I was very divided in what I was wanting to pursue and what I didn't. And I started really quickly weighing what I had to what I did not have or what I was unsure about. And I realized, well, you're making a mistake here. And I
Mm.
felt as though, as I was sitting, I felt as though I heard a voice saying, Terry, you have to go to Orville. And I sat and I did not move. But then my spirit, like, I started feeling jittery, like, I had to do something. I had to get up and I get out of the bus, forget the bus fare. Of course, I would miss the bus because the engine was on
They're about to
and
leave.
we were about to leave. And I got up and ran out through the front door and ran up the road because I knew in my heart that if I let that happen, I would be making a really, really big mistake.
Wow. Okay. So you're running to Daddy.
Yeah.
What is going through your mind as you are pelting behind him?
I'm hoping that he would talk, that he would allow the relationship to go on because really and truly, I didn't say anything. At that stage
Mm.
in my life, when I was upset about something or in turmoil about anything, I didn't talk. I just closed up and I just didn't
Mm.
say anything to anybody. I would just shut down. That's what I had done.
I should have hide behind a building at that point.
That would not have been good. But when I ran down the steps, the bus steps, I knew that that was a decision I had to make, and that was my only chance to make that decision.
That's a lot of pressure on one situation. So hypothetically, if Mummy had not gotten off the bus and ran after you, Daddy, Do you feel like, say, in a couple of days, she has processed her emotions and she's ready to talk and she wants to like pursue things, she's ready to reveal what she was feeling, whatever, answer the questions you were asking that night. If she were to reach out to you, do you really believe, like, do you feel like you would have been over it? It would have been too late?
Putting myself in that situation at that point in time, I would say to you that I was pretty resolved.
Wow.
And it wasn't because I was trying to be stubborn. It was, I truly believe that relationships go through phases and that we were ready to move to the next phase. And
Mm,
if we didn't navigate the transition to that next phase well, that we would have been in that kind of turbulence.
mm,
I felt that we had reached a point where we needed to make the commitment to move forward because it's one thing to be in permanent courtship and another thing to be in really trying to build something for the future, right? So I felt
mhm,
that we had gone through the courtship phase and we needed to say we're in this for the long haul. And I felt that
mm,
that moment, as bad as that timing was, it was a pivotal moment where if you are still second guessing a year and a half after and all of the things that we had gone through, by this time your mommy had given me expensive gifts and we had been out and everybody knew that we were a thing, right? If
mhm,
at this point in time you are still having uncertainty about whether this is something for the long haul, it probably meant that we had run our course. And I did not want to bog her down with flip flopping, and I certainly didn't want to go through that process of trying to figure it out. So I was
mhm.
pretty resolved in my mind at that point in time. Now, whether 3 or 4 days later I would be at a different point, I don't know. But I would say to you, excuse me, my recall of that night was that that was truly it.
Okay, so you brought up two really big points here. You mentioned courtship, and honestly, in today's day and age, does not, I mean, let me not say that. I am sure that people who are in the church and are living a fairly traditional life still court, but in secular culture, courtship is not really a thing. So, could you give me your perspective on courtship versus dating? What is the difference? Is
Well,
there a difference?
I think that the terms are interchangeable, but dating seems to suggest that it is a more loose commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Courtship is I am intentionally seeking to learn more about you because I have intentions of moving out of phase one into phase two.
Mm.
Dating, and there's somebody watching this who will say, well, that's not really how
They
dating is
may not
perceived.
agree.
They may not agree, but dating seems to suggest that, uh, yeah, we are exploring, but there is no real clear plan to move to another phase. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I would
Mm,
say that courtship is more like a part of if you were to think in business terms, part of an action plan where
mm,
these are some intentional and purposeful steps that we're taking to help build what I would consider to be the foundation of the relationship so that we can move to the next phase where we start talking about what does long term look like? What does
mm.
marriage look like? What does life look like together? Dating feels a little bit more exploratory, still very much in that early phase. So, what I would say is that maybe there's a thing about dating that then goes into courtship, that then goes into relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. That's what I was gonna ask.
yeah.
Okay. Because
Yeah,
it seems like a natural progression there.
I would say so.
Um,
Yeah.
okay. All right, cool. So then you also mentioned the timing and what happened in the time before you guys had this pivot moment. So do you feel like there's a certain amount of time that naturally leads to making that decision to either move to the next stage or stay where you are, or is it just dependent on the events that occur in whatever time you have? Like, does that make sense?
Ask it differently if you don't mind.
Okay. Okay. So I'll give you an example, like an anecdotal one. Not my anecdote, but just in general. So essentially, a lot of women, when you come to a certain age, start to feel pressure for things to happen, biological clocks and all of that. So like after, honestly, after 25, dating starts to kind of change in today's world, at least from my experience. And there tends to be more pressure on the relationship sometimes. And people will have conversations where you say, well, I'm not going to date you for X amount of time if you're not going to have any intentions on moving forward. So, do you feel like it's realistic to put a time frame on that natural progression of a relationship moving into the next phase?
Mummy, you have a thought on that? You go first, because I have a theory, but let's hear what Mummy has to say.
Are you talking about my feelings now or back then?
Let's go with back then because back then would be me right now.
Okay. Um, Talking from my perspective, back then, I feel as though I was very influenced by things that I saw around me.
Hmm.
And so my time frame was influenced by people I knew who were where we were and they were getting married or their relationships were serious. And so I started gauging my relationship with daddy from that perspective. That there are
Um,
people who are my age who are getting married, and maybe we should think about something like that as well. Not necessarily meaning that we were ready to go that far at that time. It is just that um, other people were doing it, and it felt like if it's something that we should do as well.
oh wow. Oh wow. I mean that hit the nail on the head, honestly. A
So,
lot of people on my timeline are getting married, but yeah.
yeah, but I think that one of the things that you cannot eliminate from answering that question is sort of our philosophical or our faith or our religious beliefs and our upbringing and the ways in which we have been taught about family and the emergence of family and the importance of relationships and how to treat ladies and how ladies should treat guys and our own upbringing almost was sort of a recipe for how the relationship should evolve and what were the do's and don'ts of that relationship.
Mhm.
So in some regard, there was an expectation because of our religious upbringing. There was an expectation that if you announced yourself as a couple, then you were going to behave yourself in a particular way where the idea of dating others did not resonate well with people. That was not a thing. You're not seeing two and three different people at the same
At the
time.
same time. Hmm.
So the way in which that timeline plays out really had to do with wanting to ensure that you were making reasonable progress towards a permanent relationship because from a spiritual point of view, you did not want your relationship to get to a point of being physical, which was going to be a
Oh.
natural thing as two people became more attracted to each other, spending more time together. You did not want your relationship to progress to intimacy in a way that then undermines your religious beliefs and your religious upbringing and how Christian young people should behave.
Hey guys, I am sure that you are not that excited to hear my voice outside of the conversation with my parents, but this episode did run super long, so I decided to split it into 2 parts. And the next part will be dropping in. I'm not going to tell you because you actually need to follow us on Instagram at lovebygod.pod to find out the date for the next drop. But here's a big hint if you've made it this far in the episode. Every 2-part episode, both parts will be dropping in the same week. So make sure that you stay tuned on whatever streaming service you're using to listen to this episode, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the above. Make sure you keep an eye on the podcast page so that you don't miss the next drop. But for now, thank you so much for tuning into Love by God, the podcast, and I will talk to you soon, and we'll explore more about intimacy outside of marriage, how it was viewed back in 1983. I believe that's the year that we're talking about right now. How the perspective of it today may have changed, and then we'll delve a little bit more into love languages and how/if it affects your compatibility. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. This is your host Rob, and I will talk to you next time. Bye bye.